Whilst that mind's running the show and we're unaware of it, it can really take charge and you're no longer in the driver's seat. You've got this feeling of like, where are we?
An amazing friend and guest of mine here, Ali Flynn. This girl is so successful.
Well, there's a few.
We didn't even realize. We've given you a lot to work on, everybody.
It's actually getting harder. You know, I feel like this has been the hardest by far. But I'm here and showing up at work because I ended up having a stroke. I have a condition called reversible vasoconstriction syndrome. What happened for me internally in that moment is
Cosmic Money, the podcast, the strategy and energetics of seven-figure business.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Cosmic Money, the podcast. I'm Sky Hanley, your amazing host, of course. And today I'm super excited to have an amazing friend and guest of mine here, Ali Flynn. Now, I genuinely have to look down at a piece of paper because this girl is so successful that there are so many different things. She is a high-performance coach. She is an entrepreneur, founded 3 businesses, running 3 companies, has a background in psychology and fitness, as well as has an amazing international podcast of her own, Challenges That Change Us, which I was very lucky to be on myself. Hello, how are you?
Hello, Sky. Thank you so much for having me on. I've been really looking forward to this all week, mainly because I get to see you and have a chat, but also hoping we can bring some value to your beautiful listeners out there today.
Of course. I was saying to you already as well that I'm really excited for this, this chat and this discussion because I know, part of what you and I have in common. Again, a lot of history. I feel like, we have some similarities, but also we both have a really deep love for things like behavioral science and how the human works and how the human doesn't work sometimes and things like that. So I'm very much excited to be able to just pick your brain and unpack with you today. So, yeah.
Let's get into it.
And go. So, talk to us a little bit about you, my love, because you are a fascinating being, genuinely so. And, every time, this is why we needed to have a catch up even pre this episode, is just to be like, what are you doing? What have you got your hands in at the moment? How are things? What's happening? So literally unpack, tell us what's happening at the moment for you. What are you up to? What are you super excited about?
Yeah, and we did actually have to say, we've got a podcast to do today because you and I were like chitter-chattering and we were like, half an hour later. But no, we at the moment it's pretty exciting down here. I'm in Armidale, which is regional New South Wales, halfway between Sydney and Brisbane. And so I have my little companies here. When I say little, one of them's a local fitness business and the other one's a national wellbeing and performance company. And we are doing lots of work in the national business with corporates, working with their leadership teams and their exec teams and their up and coming emerging leaders around how to grow their culture, how to work with their people, how to understand their people. When you talk about behavior, it's like, well, what do we know? How can we ask more curious questions? How can we hold space for people? And especially today, it is such a fast-paced world. And it's so easy for our people component of business to just drop off and we just hope that it's going to be okay. We pull from a bucket and pull from a bucket and pull from a bucket and sometimes forget to fill it back up again. So I'm doing a lot of work in that space. We've just released a resilience course, which is a 6-week course that people can do anytime from anywhere. And the podcast is going gangbusters. It's like top 10% in the world. So that's keeping me super, super busy.
Yeah, amazing. I love that you like myself, have so many, what's the saying? Like when you have hands in a pot or something?
Balls in the air. I don't know. I'm not great with sayings.
Neither am I. I generally mix them up and whatever, but it's I think sometimes people can come from a space of, scarcity or an anxiety or a need to do lots of different things. And then other people just come from an absolute love for it and expansion and interest and can actually hold many things at different levels, hold things in a higher frequency. And you're definitely one of those humans, that I know is, doing lots of different things at any one time. And it's amazing.
It's funny you should say that because I think it was probably only a couple of years ago that I had an aha moment. And that was was around this very thing. I was like, why do I keep doing so many projects? Like, why can't I be content with running one company? Or how come I have to always be like, what's the next shiny thing? And it wasn't until I kind of sat back and reflected on it, how to think about it. I was like, you know what? All of the businesses that I've run and the podcast are just vehicles for what I love to do, which is helping people, growth, challenge. I love all of those things. And whether it be counseling, whether it be PT, whether it be a host of a podcast, whether it be my wellbeing and performance company, they are all just vehicles. I'm still doing the same thing. And that was kind of a big aha moment for me, because it made me realize that I'm not just constantly chasing a new shiny bright thing. I actually am just consolidating my skills and transferring them into a different space that may either be another way to try and achieve what I love to do so much.
I totally resonate with that as well, because I remember in my own journey, like from probably teens, into my 20s and stuff like that, I like being the super wanker multimodality health professional that I am, like I went and learnt and grew and, and studied like a lot. And every time, when you don't see somebody for a few months or 6 months and they'll be like, hey, what are you up to now? Like, you're doing the catch up. And I would tell them something in what's to them would have seemed like something entirely different, and they're like, oh my God, you're doing this whole other thing now. But always in my mind, it made sense, because it was like everything was connected, and it was all part of the same journey. And it was just a different iteration or a new experience or another level or something like that. And it always made sense to me, even if from the outside people were like, oh, are you, just chasing shiny things or something like that? And it's like, no, like it's all of service. It's all about humans. It's all, like showing up and growth and edges and all of those amazing things. So, yeah, you go.
and if you love growth, like if growth sits as one of your human needs, it actually, you vibe off it, right? Like for me, when people say, go and have some self-care, I think, all right, can I study another course? Like genuinely, yeah. I'm like, let me find what else I can learn, rather than, I love having my feet in the soil. And I'm not a huge bath person, but I'm a huge water person. But often that's not what fires my soul up. That is maybe a little bit of relaxing time. But if I really want to feel alive and passionate and like I'm in my lane, then it is absolutely growth. It is absolutely learning a new skill, talking to a new person, connecting in with someone, and just getting more information in any shape or form.
Yes. I think I feel like they need to have a name for it or something. There's got to be like an information addiction or something like that. Like, yes. Like a diagnosis or something along those lines. I recently had this really beautiful experience actually that was, when I started studying paramedical science, and I'm literally just doing it for fun because, to me, that's relaxation. To me, that's, like me and some joy and of frequency and again, service. And it's so connected to things that I've loved, like a good injury. That sounds so weird, like over the years and stuff. But, and my partner, like who's come on this amazing journey with me, over the years, like kind of gets it now. He doesn't see it like, this other thing. And he actually had a conversation with my mom that I just kind of sat back like a fly on the wall where she was worried about my health, or she was worried I was pushing too hard. And he sort of said, well, no, you've got to understand that this is Sky in her life force, that this isn't taking life force from her, this gives her life force. So she has to do these kinds of things because that's her in her excitement, in her joy, and in her, in her creation and all the rest of it.
And if you think about mind, body, and soul, that's how you fill your soul up. That's how you fill your bucket up, your well-being bucket in soul. Whereas when someone looks from the outside in and says, oh my God, they need to rest, they might be thinking you need to physically rest or you need to mentally rest. Like, you're going 100 miles an hour, but they're not necessarily thinking about those three components, that there's the soul component as well. And that's deep, right?
Yes. Yeah. And filling like, it's like it has its own cup, like filling the soul cup.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, something I just touched on obviously is that, you and I have a bit of likeness with our own sort of health journeys and craziness and things like that. So I know that we both have to be mindful in our own psychopathy and, need to do a million different things. So why don't you talk to us about a little bit about your own health journey and what's come up for you over the years and, how that's kind of landed you as the amazing human you are today?
Yeah, well, I guess it probably goes back to my background was in psychology. I did psych law and then went to out even further far west to Dubbo and worked with kids that were homeless or at risk of homelessness as more of a clinical therapist. Absolutely loved what I did, fell pregnant with my first child and realised that it probably wasn't the work that I needed to be doing with little young ones. A lot of it was sexual assault and domestic violence, heavy trauma work, which so passionate about, but just wasn't the right time with young kids. And so I stepped away and I sort of wasn't sure what I was going to do, but I was just being a mum, right? Like I was like, I actually really love this. I'm in my jam. It is the hardest of hard, but I really love being a mum. And one of the gyms that I was training at the time mentioned to me, would I consider doing my personal training certificate? And I was like, well, how long does that take? What would it look like? And at the time, it was a 6-month TAFE course. I was like, what? Okay, I'm in. Like that, let's do it. You know, this is after a couple of degrees. So 6 months at TAFE at the time was like, yes, I can manage that. So I went and did that and started training as a fitness instructor, had another child, and then decided I was going to open my own business. I had one of the local gyms in town say, if you open your own business, you can come and have this gym for free and access to all our clients. You can have this room. I had not at any point ever considered running a business. I didn't even really know what running a business was, right? Didn't run in my family, didn't have friends that ran businesses. It was just kind of this opportunity got landed in my lap. And I was like, who do I know that knows anything about this topic? And I rang one of my mates who's awesome in business, and he came over and he said, look, it is really low risk, high reward. You've got nothing to lose. There's no overheads. Why don't you go and give it a crack? What else are you doing at the moment other than, that sounds terrible when I say other than being a mum, but more in the sense that I was being a mum, and he meant if you're not going back to psych and you know that you don't want to go back into the clinical world, what are you wanting to do? Because this could be a space that you might really enjoy. And so I started it, but 6 weeks later, I was getting ready to run a boot camp. I was up in my bathroom and I got this insane headache on my left and pins and needles down my right. And in that moment, I knew I was in trouble. In that moment, I thought my life was over and I was like, something is serious here. And I called out to my husband and, you know, fast forward a little bit, I ended up having a stroke. I have a condition called reversible vasoconstriction syndrome, which for most people doesn't result in a stroke. It's about bottom 5%. I was one of the ones that ended up in a stroke. I ended up in Sydney and I was in hospital for a few months. Couldn't read and write. Couldn't stand on one leg. I'd completely lost my short-term memory. So I knew who I was. I knew I had 3 kids. I knew I had a husband, but I didn't know my 3 kids were with me, or I didn't know if I'd put on undies that day, or I didn't know if I'd eaten, or there was just kind of no tracking back in my memory. If someone asked me a question about the here and now, the very present moment, it was like there was just a blank wall behind my eyes. But if you asked me about an experience from university, I could track back and find it. So it was just the short-term memory.
May I ask you about that? Because again, that's something that we've had likeness in, because I know when I've been unwell with MS, and had that piece of sort of memory or a little piece of personality taken away as well. It's kind of this weird thing. This is my experience and I'd love to hear yours, is that I'm both calm in that moment of, that I don't remember or that, whatever. But at the same time, there's a piece of it that's still terrifying, being aware. This is how I describe it. It's like being aware of your own insanity, and that piece, when I think about it emotionally, there's probably nothing that terrifies me more, and although I'm okay in the moment where I'm just like, okay, I don't really remember if I've got underpants on today or, I'm sitting in a blank room and even that feels like too much, but it's fine. I'll just, whatever. But the concept of it, that's the thing that breaks my brain.
And I've learnt, it even happened last week when I was up on stage giving a keynote and I couldn't find my words. So I substituted for another. But what happened for me internally in that moment is I chose to choose a different word. No one saw it. And I don't realize that. I think everyone can see the struggle that I have in my brain. I think everyone can see that I'm desperately trying to find words, or I feel it sounds horrible, but I feel less smart. That goes all the way back to my childhood, but
I think I have
long
that trigger
story.
as well.
Yeah. And so
we'll unpack that another day.
And in our new podcast,
yes,
how child
I am intelligent.
Yeah, but that's what gets triggered for me, and it's the grief I had a huge amount of grief around, I was hanging on so tightly to who I was before I had that stroke that I forgot to kind of stop and soak up who I could be now that I've had it, and that there's a whole new life, and I may have got there anyway. Like, I was still hanging on so tightly to like, but I used to be able to, and back when, and you know, if you only saw me when I was well.
Yes. I remember a few years ago having a conversation with one of my best friends as well, who has epilepsy, you know, and it was such an interesting conversation, like speaking to somebody who has had something neurological as well, and to have likeness and understanding, even though there's difference, you know, and even though, like, exactly, we're all different people with different experience, and even different symptomology when these things show up. Like, there is comfort, I think, you know, in being able to talk to somebody else that sort of gets it, you know, when you're like, I don't know, like I walked past a tree and the tree was scaring me and I can't explain why, or like, you know, or I can't remember this thing, or like, you know, whatever else it might be. It's like, I find, you know, again, this is why I love medical things, to be honest with you. Even when I was diagnosed with MS, I was like, fuck, it's me, but also this is fascinating. Like, how interesting is all of this? But damn it, like, you know, and so I think you just get used to, it sounds terrible, rolling with the punches a little bit, and it becomes a little bit more calm. That's how I found it. Like you said, you know, being on stage and forgetting a word, like, probably doesn't faze me. I play into it now as well, you know, and I think that if we weren't to do that, it would make it harder, and not just more obvious, but fucking awkward and weird, and, you know, go down into a weird, you know, a strange place, instead of playing with it and being able to be forgetful, and it actually just be part of the thing, and it not really be a big drama. And, you know, like, why not?
And reality is they probably don't even notice anyway. Like, we're the only ones holding us to account in that moment and being highly critical of ourselves.
Yes, yes.
But definitely it's that. And when you spoke earlier about, I think about it ebbs and flows, you know, like adversity comes and it passes, challenge comes and it passes through our world. So it's like the ocean, it ebbs and flows. And I think that's something I've learned over time with the challenges. I call mine the Bondi buses. For those of you that are in Australia, we have a place called Bondi, which most people would have heard about. And if you miss the bus, there's literally 1 minute later. So we sort of talk about my challenges and adversity as the Bondi buses. Like, you can say goodbye to one and the next one's parking its ass right there, ready to go. But they do pass, you know. And you, when they pass, you get the opportunity to reflect on it and think, what did I take away from that? No matter how, the hardest of hard gives you the best of the best. And business is the same.
Yes. I always say to my clients and anyone who will listen, really, that, you know, the gift for me in all of this adversity and stuff like that was really being able to also future-proof as much as I could, you know, like future-proof my existence, put backups on backups within my own business, you know. And I see, because obviously I work with a lot of like entrepreneurs, coaches, like e-com, all of this sort of stuff, is that a lot of them don't actually have those backups and they haven't future-proofed. And I just sort of think, like, and, you know, I don't think this is grim, you know, that's my little preface. I don't think it's grim to sort of go, well, look, we're all humans and shit's probably going to happen, you know, and if it's not happening to you, it may happen to a child or a parent, or, you know, the plumbing bursts at home, or whatever it might be, right? Part of being human, as you've sort of pointed out, you know, is Bondi bus. There's adversity, and there's going to be the next bit and the next bit. So why wouldn't we just actively plan for the potential for that, you know? And on the flip side, for business, it's like, well, what if you just want to go on a holiday? You know, let's future-proof your business and your existence enough. It doesn't have to be for the negative, but let's be intelligent, you know, and understand that, you know, you're a human living a life with a whole bunch of other humans around you. Adversity is probably going to strike. But even in that regard, you know, like, even if it's for something happy, you know, you want to take 3 weeks off because it's somebody's wedding over in Europe or something like that, you know, like, let's future-proof and build businesses and lives, you know, governed around that kind of a thing.
And I can speak to that very specifically. I got really sick 3 years ago with POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, which meant that I had trouble standing up. I went from being an iron woman to not being able to have a shower or walk to the kitchen and grab a cup of tea. It felt like it was overnight. It was probably over a space of 3 to 6 weeks, but it felt overnight. I went from an iron woman to not being able to walk, and I had 3 companies at that stage. I had 27 staff, and I was gone for 11 months. Very sick for 11 months, bedridden, couldn't get up. They didn't know what was wrong with me. They thought maybe that brain condition had come back that had caused my stroke, which I think there's only a handful of people in the world that their brain conditions come back. So there was a lot of uncertainty. I didn't even know if I'd return to my businesses. But Sky, what you were just talking about is what saved my businesses during that time. I had, because of my stroke and because I have a daughter with a chronic illness, I had future-proofed my businesses enough, and I had worked with my team around strategies and language and processes for, if I'm not here, what does it look like? What do you need from me? And once I got sick, one of my simple questions to them was, guys, I've got to tap out. I don't know how long for. What do you need from me to set you up for success going forwards? And can you deal with the clients, but you've got access to me whenever you need it? So you can pick up the phone to me 24/7, but do you feel confident dealing with anything that comes from the client face? And that comes from what you said. It's that resilience piece, setting it up.
Yeah. It's so like powerful, I believe, because we're being of action, not a reaction to our businesses, and not being a reaction to our lives, And so it genuinely, emotionally makes no sense to me. I just want to grab people and shake them. To not set things up in that way, and we're able to do it from ground up. So it doesn't matter where in our business journey we are, or our entrepreneurial space, whether it's from the very beginning, whether we're in the middle somewhere and we just don't have this stuff, happening, or whether, we're time and tested, solid business for long term. Again, bringing more of this into it. Within my own business, we have backups on backups. I said that before, but what that actually means is, cool, no worries. What if I'm down and out for the count? Who's then in charge, or what does that look like, or what is our, what's our process? And then on top of that, we make sure we know, okay, if that person's down and out or something weird goes on, what's the backup on that? Because I just think when you're dealing with people's performances and humans and all the rest of it, which so much of our businesses are based around, you spoke to leadership earlier, right? I think that's part of being a leader, because the ecosystem, this is how I see my business, the ecosystem is not just there for me, it's there for us all. And so if my job within that ecosystem is to be the leader and to be the visionary, then I'm not just future-proofing for myself, my main assistant, we've worked together for 6 years, bless her mum had a heart attack last year, and my business being built in the way that it was, she is my sanity, bless her, I love her, dearly, but it's a no fucking brainer from me that she was able to take as much time off as she needed, fully paid, and all the rest of it, so she did not have to stress, because the ecosystem is there for us all.
And to get that ecosystem, I think it comes back to values and priorities. You've got to be crystal clear on what they are. They are our guiding light all the time. My team at my fitness business, for example, we train the person, not just the body, and they know that it's accountability, it's results, and it's community. So they can make a decision without me there very easily. Is this about the person? And is it about one of those three values? Because if they can track it back to that, they know it's an absolute yes from me. They don't even have to think about that. They'd be like, ours will back me 110% on this because it's aligned with our vision. It's aligned with our values. And that's why spending those days in strategy meetings and spending those team days working that stuff out can make a huge difference for when adversity strikes.
I always sort of say as well, you speak about team and, and building a really beautiful culture and stuff like that. And even having those shared values and shared missions. And that is so important, right? I always say that, staff, punch in, punch out, clock on, clock off, do not give a fuck, right? They're just there for the paycheck, right? Whereas team are as equally as bought into the mission, the dream, the vision as the leader is. And that's truly who it is that, you want within the business ecosystem. And again, it is part of that, the leader's job to lead and to guide and to, support the team, to be on mission and to build a really beautiful culture. You are the expert on all things that anyway. So I would love for you to unpack even more of your take, because you literally go into businesses, into corporate and things like that and help them with their leadership and their resilience and their teams. Talk to us a little bit more about that work.
Yeah. So usually we start with we have a conversation about where have they come from, where do they see themselves now, and where do they want to go, so we can kind of get a lay of the land. Like, you know, you need to know the starting point, and you need to get a bit of an understanding around what's their view of it and their lens that they're looking through. But from there, I say we've got to bring the team in. Like, let's bring them in and let's just get a foundational block, whether that be something like disc profiling, which I love so much because it's a communication framework that people can use the moment they walk out the door. Is it the best out there? I don't know. I've done lots of them. They all serve a purpose. It's like one's a fork, one's a knife, one's a spoon. What do you want to eat? So, you know, disc is just one of many, but it's
Can you explain to people what disc is? Because like, again, I understand and I use a lot of diagnostics within my own business and with the people that we coach and stuff like that. So talk to us about, disc and using something like that as a diagnostic within a business.
Yeah, so it's a personality profiling tool used for dialogue, not diagnosis. So it's like Myers-Briggs or strengths characteristics. There's lots out there. The reason I love disc so much is it's simple and it speaks lay language. And in my experience over a couple of decades, people still remember it in 5, 10, 15 years. And it externalizes some of our characteristics and traits for us to be able to have conversations about and not just understand that people are different, but truly appreciate their differences. So let me explain that a little bit more. It's like, you know, that moment you're sitting there and you see someone do something like take the bin out and you think, why on earth are they doing that? Like, why are they doing that now? Or why are they doing it that way? Or why are they in the first place even doing it? You know, we all have those moments in team, in life, with our home life, with our friends. We're speaking Latin, they're speaking French. And we just haven't built a bridge between the two. So disc profiling is something that can give us that language between the two so that we can understand. They take it out because it's important for them to have order in their world and structure, and they like to know that they can tick off the tasks that can get done easily so that they can focus on the bigger tasks. So it helps us understand, but it also helps us appreciate it, because for us, we might be someone that's like, no, we just do it on the fly. You know, we don't need to be organized. We just want to do it with our friend next door, and we'll both go out and have a yarn and chat about the weekend on the way to take the bin out. So if we can appreciate that someone is different and what that brings to the table, because the magic happens when we have diversity on a team. The magic happens in business when we have diversity within business. Yes, it's really important to have your niche and your core product. But, you know, when I sit back now and think about what makes me feel like I'm successful today, it's not the companies, it's that we have diverse income streams. We own a corporate building, we have companies, we have shares, we have, you know, like there's the diversity of income and the diversity of challenge and the diversity of people in our worlds. That's what brings richness, and that's what can bring some of that success. So in personalities, we want diversity as well, but we want to be able to speak their language. We want to make the people that are speaking French and the people that are speaking Latin have a bridge.
I've spent my life obsessed with the strategy and energetics of seven-figure business. I've literally traveled the world trying to crack the code. And what I've found is that when you couple the pursuit of making massive amounts of money with the strategy and science of success, plus having a desire for significant impact and contribution, magic happens. That's why I created a free 21-day next level vortex money mission magic. Hell yes to that. This 21-day quantum business challenge is here to shift you into new timelines and realities. 21 days to quantum shift your impact, business, and your bank account. These carefully crafted and channeled tools are the exact things I've used to create a life beyond my wildest dreams, and I'm not done yet. If you're ready for incredible transformation now in all areas of your life, more money and financial freedom, freedom of time, freedom of lifestyle, freedom of choice, better, more connected relationships, greater levels of health, and simply calling in more magic into every single day, then these 21 days are going to blow your mind. 21 days of powerful universal, behavioral, and strategic tools to quantum shift your internal state so that you start to see massive changes in your external reality, bringing the metaphysical into the physical. Join the challenge now and get ready for the most powerful 21-day expansion to quantum shift your impact, business, bank account, and your life.
Cosmic Money, the podcast, the strategy and energetics of seven-figure business.
I remember recently, like with my team, we actually also did just love languages.
Oh,
You
love
know,
love
like
languages.
yeah, like because I thought I was recognizing that one of my team members, needed a little bit more reassurance, and would ask a lot of questions, like because they needed that extra bit of sort of reassurance and and sort of verbal dialogue, and for me it was it was, to be fair, it was almost starting to grind on me a little bit, because I'm so not like that. Like I'm like, it's good. I know it's good. I'll tell myself. I don't need anyone else's external, like, whatever to tell me it's good. I've already decided in my own head. Whereas she was like, as I said, very opposite to that. And I thought, oh my goodness, when it dawned on me and I realized, I was like, oh, I think this is actually part of her, her makeup and her needs. And there's no righting or wronging. Let's just say that as well, which you alluded to, that it's just different maps, and I'm no more right or wrong than anybody else within my team for how they think or how they move through the world and stuff like that. And so having these little diagnostics and these pieces of knowledge is absolutely, power, right? Because then I can see, well, if my team member is very small chunk, detail oriented, and takes a lot of verbal cues, whereas somebody else may not need as many, or a high chunk, or, whatever it is, like you can actually start to obviously moderate and everybody works more cohesively, having an appreciation and understanding of one another.
It's the art of dancing in conversation. It's how do you sit with someone and be present and help draw out the conversation so that you both understand what's going on and that you can get an outcome if that's what you're looking for. If you're talking to a staff member about a challenge they're having and you're only speaking your language and not theirs, then they could feel put off, unheard, undervalued. So it's one of many. But you spoke about love languages. So for anyone listening, if you have not done this, it is free online. Jump on now, press pause, Google love language quiz and give it a crack.
Yours? What are your love languages?
Mine's time and touch. And so is my husband, which makes it very easy for us. I find it very challenging because I have 0 on the gifts. And so I find it very challenging when people deliver gifts all the time to me because I don't know what to do with that. It feels awkward for me because it's not my love language and I don't speak in that. But then I'm also really terrible at giving gifts. Terrible at it.
Yes.
I'm very thoughtful of other people, but my sister-in-law's birthday was 4 weeks ago and I still haven't bought a gift over, but gift is her biggest love language. So she potentially could be feeling hurt because she feels like I don't see her and I'm not like considering her, but I 100% am in her corner. I'm a biggest cheerleader. It's just that that's not the way I speak. That's not my love language.
It is fascinating. I'm the same. Like my partner and I are the same. Like you, we have the same love languages, which makes life a little bit easier. And because exactly, you can have the way that you receive love, but you could also give it in a different way. And so that's really interesting too. If you're a giver, is different to the way that you receive it. So
to give you an example on how it works with team is I actually do the love languages with my team when they come on board. So they do their DISC, they do their love languages, they do their 6 human needs is another one that you can jump online
that's a
and
great
do.
one. Yeah.
So we've got a few little ones that they do, but with the love language, there was, after that 11 months when I came back, I was like, how can I truly say thank you to my staff and my team? Because my company grew to capacity full while I was off. And I was like, how is this even possible? So for one of my girls at works, we went away for a night and had a great chat, went out for dinner, because time is so important to her. With another team member, it was a gift. I gave them something. For another one, it was giving them a financial bonus. But I was really keyed up on what it is that really goes straight to the heart of saying, thank you, I appreciate you, I see you. And it is so different for each of my... And you can actually ask people that. You can just say, hey, when have you felt most appreciated at work? And what did that look like? And, when you feel most appreciated at home, or do you like gifts? Or, you can ask questions if you don't do the quiz. It kind of really helps
you can tell
as a
pretty
leader.
quickly.
Yeah.
You can tell pretty quickly what it is that matters to them or whatever.
Yeah.
For sure. Yes. Another little thing that I do as well, like within my business and for like my coaching clients and things like that is we create our own diagnostics. And so if there is something where it's like, okay, well, we get a little bit of love language over here, we get a little bit of disc over there, some Myers-Briggs or whatever, but also it's like, well, again, our ecosystem is actually really important. And a really simple thing you can do is take the I always get it backwards, wheel of life. Take the wheel of life, and actually create, your own inputs, like what's important to the organization, what is being on mission, and people get to actually fill in the wheel of life, but you almost like brand it, I suppose, to your own organization. So we're always checking on, how our clients are feeling with their systems, how are they feeling with their support, where's their life force energy at, their frequency, like all these different things. It's another really great diagnostic, and it's a very simple one you can actually appropriate and create into something that you need, that's going to give you the information that you're actually specifically after.
And a beautiful visual as well. As you were saying that, I was thinking this is not where I thought the conversation would go. Can I just clarify today? But since we're here, let's sit in it a little deeper.
Yes.
One of the ones that I really love as well, and quite similar, is when you think about symbols and pictures and being creative, and how do we draw out of our team what do they love, and how do they work, and when are they on fire, and what does it look like when they're stressed? Because if we can understand that about the people next to us, we can support them through that stress pit. Do they like to be left alone? Do they like us to put out an olive branch? But you can do the mask, where on the outside of the mask, it's like how people see you, how they experience you. And on the inside, it's like, these are the things you don't know about me. And it can really open up some vulnerability for the team to understand each other and be like, oh, I never knew that about you. Or, when I'm stressed, for example, I actually go away from people. I actually hibernate. And there's a name that people use for me, and it's Violet. It's my strong, dominant, really big picture strategy, fast-paced, risk-taking kind of personality. And when I'm really vulnerable and stressed, Violet comes out, but she comes out in a space that she's like, I don't like humans. Can you leave me alone? Which is so weird, because the majority of my personality is I love on people. I'm like, yes, I'm in your corner. I'm right beside you. I will walk beside you naked if you need me to, if it's going to get you over that line. That real fitness coach kind of mentality. What do you need from me? Because I am beside you. But when I get stressed, I'm the exact opposite. I'm like, don't come to me. Don't talk to me. I need my space. I'm stressed here. And if I haven't had that conversation with my team, it can feel like I've just, got a cattle prodder out and given them electric shock or something, because they're like, whoa, what just happened?
Yeah, I always joke about having meltdowns, because I just think it's in my brain, it's it's just a part of business, and we're going to talk about resilience, right?
Well, we were going to talk about resilience.
Probably still will, to be fair. Because resilience is such maybe this is the segue, who knows? But absolutely, I'll have a little meltdown on the odd occasion, when there's a lot going on and something else, and I'll be like, oh my God, and again, my assistant who's worked with me for years and years, she's not even sweating it, because she knows that I am such a resilient person that I'll be on the floor for 2 minutes, and then I'm dusting the crown off, putting it back on my head, and I'm going to be, keep going. But our newer team members, originally when they came on in the last kind of year, might not and didn't recognize that or didn't know that. So we actually had to really reassure them, while I was just having a moment, that everything is actually okay. And it wasn't that I was projecting it, all on them, but it's I might be talking a little bit faster, or I might be a bit more there's less inflection on what I'm saying, because I'm honestly probably just in solution mode, because I'm right, what is this, what is that, we need to do this other thing, how's that, where's this thing, send me that, and it's not that I'm being rude, it's just that it requires a different energy for that moment, and that could, for somebody who is unaware, come across as something else, whatever their trigger or trauma may be, yeah.
And my big ones, I'm like, well, if that doesn't work out, we could sell the business. And for my team, when they hear that language, they're invested, right? My team's been with me for 10 years. They're like, bing, 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 red lights going off. And it wasn't until a team member pulled me aside one day and said, are you really going to sell? And I was like, no, why would I sell? And they're like, you just said I was like, oh, that was a flyaway comment, because I can have flyaway comments. I'm not attached to them, but they still land just as heavy for some of my team. So, that's the beauty when we were talking about profiling and having a workshop with your team around communication, is you can highlight some of these things, and they're now above the table. They're not below the table. So people can call you on it. I give everyone permission to call me on it. I'm like, if you don't want Violet in the room, you can absolutely say that. Can Violet please step out while we have a conversation? You know, but it just brings it to the surface and it externalizes it. So it's not about us as the human. It's about some of the traits and characteristics that we have and display at certain times when we're vulnerable, stressed, or excited.
Yes. And I mean, that is behavioral science, right? And I love what you were saying about stress as well. It really brings up another amazing point that, I think that everyone has a flavor of stress too, and it could be, stressed out, burnt out, overwhelmed, like anxiety, depression, what else, procrastinator, like perfectionism, like there are kind of like main ones. And then there are, this is how I perceive it, there are sprinklings of other things that can kind of come in, like an overthinker. Or
I'm an overachiever. The more stressed I get, the more I achieve.
Yes. Oh, what is the word when it's over-functioning and under-functioning, and that is absolutely a stress response as well. And for some people, probably like you and I, these kind of high performers, like lots of energy and whatever. One of my defaults would absolutely be overachieving or overperforming.
Like starting a podcast or...
Let's free while we're at it and run 3 businesses and write a third. Exactly. It's like, oh my gosh, and so I think that that's really important to recognize in people too, or have them recognize and communicate it to you, because, if I'm working with a team member, that their flavor is overwhelm, there are particular things I can keep an eye out for, that could show up like that. For myself, it's definitely burnout, or at least it used to be. That would be my default, right? Being that, overperformer, absolutely burnout comes with that, if it isn't watched. But these days I'm quite good at making sure that isn't the thing that happens. But I remember that being such a huge realization, in my late 20s, where I was like, oh my God, like I have this default emotional home of burnout, and I'm not picking up like the messages, soon enough, and coming, with a bit of a health thing these days, it was like, I don't have the luxury of not picking that up anymore, and so burnout doesn't get to be an option, and so I do think that's a really important piece, is understanding everyone's different kind of form of stress to an extent.
And even their emotional signature. So even just coming one step back, like not even a big event when you're in that final kind of like collapse mode or hyper arousal mode, you can actually even just, how do you fight? When you're cranky at someone or frustrated at someone, are you someone that attacks outwards? Do you retreat? Do you go silent? Are you passive aggressive? Like, just drawing out the circle and perhaps just seeing like, is there a pattern there? Like, is there a pattern when I get frustrated and angry? What's my first response and my second response? And is there actually a consistency there? And if I did want to put a gap in between that first and second response, or even the first response, what would that look like? If perhaps I didn't want to go on the attack first, like I can absolutely raise my hand and say I attack outwards into the world when I'm highly stressed and vulnerable. And so I don't want to walk in the world that way. I want to perhaps think about it and go, maybe there's another side to this story. Maybe my perspective isn't the whole perspective. And that took that drawing out. Just maybe. Maybe.
Yeah, my fragile ego doesn't want to take that on board. There are other perspectives in my relationship.
Yes,
I don't know.
yes, but I probably didn't realize it until I drew it out. And then I realized, actually, I'm on the attack very early on, and so I was doing that at home, and then I was doing that at work, and then I was displaying that in my friendships. And so that was a game changer. And essentially what we're talking about here is fundamental to long-term sustainability in business is personal development. Like whether you read books, listen to podcasts, go and do a course, whatever it is, we need to understand ourselves first and foremost before we can truly understand how we relate to other people and the impact that might have on them, on the relationship, on life, on what we're trying to achieve. So, we never stop learning. We never get to a point that it's like, oh, I've done my work. I like to think that I've gotten there, and then I'm like, oh God, let's go again. Like, I sometimes feel like I'm like, oh, I feel so whole and content, and like I feel really self-aware, and then something pops up and I think, yep, no, definitely not. There it is. I don't know why that's happening. I don't know why I'm reacting like this. Let's go back and revisit.
This is why, like, I just can't separate, you know, like I talk about obviously on this podcast before for everyone who's been listening, you know, strategically, behaviorally, universally. And so working within a business, you know, and working with humans, I just can't separate them, you know, because, you know, I've said it before, no amount of strategy can out strategy something that's going on within the human, the mindset, the behavioral. And so if we're not, you know, like uncovering the layers of the onion and seeing that next piece of, you know, mirror ego that's kind of showing up for us, because it's there for a reason, you know, so that we can then journey that piece and then learn something else. And then another thing's going to come up, you know, like that's, you know, I think you called it a dance before. Like that's the dance that we're choosing to do, right? Like, and it is a choice.
And it's okay to get to a point that you get new information, new understanding, new insights, new lessons, and think, uh-oh, I'm too scared to look behind me because I actually shouldn't have been doing what I was doing. Like if I had this information, it would have looked different. We all have that. You know, I remember very clearly as a counselor experiencing that when I went away and did some sexual assault training. I was like, oh my God, I've been doing the wrong thing. And I wasn't doing the wrong thing, but I was doing what I knew and where my knowledge took me to that. My intention was always good. And I just didn't have that next piece of the pie. And business is the same. We get new information all the time.
And I think that like, you know, if we're able to hold that perspective, like it takes away a lot of the denser emotions as well. I know for me, you know, I'm a clinical holistic nutritionist, and I chose nutrition very specifically because, you know, that avenue was the avenue that felt most right to me as opposed to dietitian, you know. And I see dietitians and please, if you're a dietitian or you know one, I am not, you know, shitting on that as a profession, because I truly believe that if there are people out there in the world that are doing the best that they can with the knowledge that they have, you know, awesome. I'm so glad that there are dietitians out there helping their clients. Now, fundamentally, do I agree with many of the things that, you know, that they might promote? No, not entirely, to be honest, you know, but I get to have my journey and, you know, and help people in a beautiful way, you know, from my knowledge and, you know, my understandings and, you know, and I kind of call them iterations, this iteration of me, you know, who's doing the best that they can, who understands what they understand, and maybe, you know, something later on is going to blow up a piece of that belief or understanding. Awesome, perfect, divine, you know, and it doesn't have to be like, you know, us versus them, or we don't have to beat ourselves up if we learn something new and then we're like, oh my God, I've been, you know, running this whole other thing. Like it just, why add the extra layers of, you know, resentment or embarrassment or fear or whatever when it's just like, okay, like shit, you know, I've learned something new and fuck, like, you know, I would have done things differently. However, you know.
And I can honestly sit here today and say I have been in the therapy room. I have been on the fitness floor as a fitness coach. I have been in exec rooms doing business coaching, exec coaching. You know, I've worked with elite athletes. It's not necessarily the tool that you have. It's in that moment, in that point in time, what resonates for the person, you know, the right strategy at the right time for the right person. And so I wasn't necessarily better at therapy when I was in a therapy room to what I am now. I've probably got more riches now to draw on more tools and strategies in the moment that may help the person in front of me. But someone coming along that is first year out of uni, that has had no practical experience, may land it way better than I could land it because it was the right thing at the right time for the right person.
Yes. And there's a piece in there that I think we really need to highlight as well, is that especially if you're in a service-based industry, so, you know, like health, fitness, nutrition, you know, mindset, NLP, like spiritual coaching, whatever else, anything like that, right? Is that quite often, because we are, you know, deeply connected, caring, you know, beings and all the rest of it, we take a lot of the responsibility too. And what you're saying with the right message at the right time in front of the right person, quite often that's not even for us to know, because we could say something. No, we got no idea. You know, we could say something. And I've had this in my own experience where somebody used an analogy and the analogy was meant to mean this particular thing, but my ears heard it. My experience heard it. And my, you know, situation that I was in at that time heard that analogy and took an entirely different perspective from it. But it spiked something in me, you know, and I went, oh my gosh, coach and I'd realized something that had nothing to do with what the analogy was meant to be about, but it was the right thing at the right time for the right person. And the responsibility isn't necessarily on the, on the service person, who's actually saying the thing, the coach or whatever. There is responsibility in the person themselves who is listening, and that's how the right thing at the right time with the right person is going to land.
And it's also, I'm not saying not to go out there and learn as much as you can, because you want to have the biggest toolbox. Like, I'm a huge advocator. I don't even know if that's a word. We'll blame that one on my stroke, But yeah, an advocate for filling your toolbox up consistently over time, because you don't know what you need when you'll need it. And so, we mentioned the word resilience a few times. If you fill your bucket up, whether that be your wellbeing bucket or your toolbox of strategies for business and for personal life and professional life, it means that you've all heard that saying, don't drink from an empty cup because there's nothing there to drink. It's the same with resilience. Like, you don't want to be trying to pull on resilience. You don't want to be trying to pull on that strength within you when everything's empty and you're feeling exhausted and run down. So it's so important that we fill those buckets up. And one way we do that is through tools and strategies, whether it be life or business. So in business, it might look like, how do I problem solve? Like, what is 101 different ways I can learn to problem solve so that when a problem comes at me, because they will, what can I pull on here? Is it the Walt Disney strategy? Is it impact and ease? Is it the 3 dots and draw a line under it? Is it eat the frog first? Now, you may not know what some of those things mean, and that's okay. You can definitely go and Google them, but they're just strategies. They're just tools in my toolbox that when a problem comes, I think, what do I need here? Is it like do it now, do it later, delegate it, dump it, where you draw the 4 lines on a page? Like, they're all just tools. And so, that's that lifelong learner. But what I have gained with life experience and professional experience is it is so valuable if you can be a lifelong learner. It is so valuable if you can just collect one tool at a time and keep it in your toolbox for that rainy day that you may need it.
So, you and I are both really probably fiercely passionate about this idea.
I don't think that's come through yet.
I don't know. Yeah, like not at all. I think
I get so carried away. I keep going, what did she just ask me? Because I'm so in the moment. I'm like, oh yes, I want to keep talking about this. Let's keep going.
Yeah. I'm like, I have a question. And then you say something and I'm so deep in the thing that you're saying that I'm like, it's gone. I don't know what I'm talking about anymore.
I've done that so many times.
We're back with everyone now, with you all. So we did promise that we would talk about resilience a little bit because, when we kind of discussed what we might talk about within this podcast, I know that is something that we're both super passionate about, if we could be any more passionate about anything. Again, probably from our life experiences, and things along those lines that have given us an amount of resilience to be able to, stand in a variety of different situations, even if it's a new situation that we've never experienced before, and have trust and or confidence that there is a solution for it, and that, I find for myself, I'll let you speak for yourself, obviously, as well, that exactly like I've had a lot of life experience, for a variety of different reasons. And I'm not sure that there's ever really been a time that I haven't found a solution or moved through something or come out the other side. And so it's just a matter of a moment or a time or a tool or whatever it might be that then steps us through. And, the universe doesn't test us when it's easy. It tests us when it's hard, right? And the best time to learn things like resilience and tools and skills, as you were saying, is actually in the easy times, because you can't really learn them, or it's not as easy to learn them when you're fucking deep in the shit, you want to be able to draw on something at that point in time that is going to be the piece that gets you through it. So talk to us about your passion in relation to, resilience and your own experiences as well.
Well, I was thinking as you said that then, there's a really beautiful analogy that I use in resilience, and that is because we're all familiar with the storm, right? So when the storm hits, when you're in the eye of the storm, like shit is hitting the fan, you don't know how long it's going to be there. You don't know the intensity. You don't know what the damage is going to be. You just know that you're in survival mode, right? And you're using whatever you can to get through, whether it be a candle because the electricity's gone out, or a blanket over you because you're freezing, or calling a friend to let them know to put their cars away because there's a hailstorm on its way. Like whatever it is, you're in the moment and you're on survival. Now, the tools and strategies that we need and the mindset that we need in that moment looks completely different to the tools, strategies, and mindset that we need when we're striving. So once the storm has passed and we're in cleanup, so we're picking up branches, we're fixing windows, we're trying to work out what the new norm is. You know, what does life look like now that this has passed? Do we need to fix things? Do we need to create new things? Have we been changed in the process? And again, there's a third phase to that. It's like then we move into what we call the thriving stage. And so often we forget to acknowledge that. It's like the sun is out, the sun is shining. We are now not the same person we were when that storm started. But if nothing else was to change and we were to stay where we are right now, then things are pretty good. And taking the moment to acknowledge, and that is really where the gratitude can come in as well in that moment. It's like, look at where I am, look at what I do have and not what I don't have. And the strategies and tools in that moment are very different. The mindset in that moment is very different. But we need to acknowledge and appreciate and be kind to ourselves that they are very different phases. And business is the same. When I call them spot fires, sometimes bushfires,
Yes,
and sometimes there's multiple of them. It's like that's when the storm is there. The shit is hitting the fan. It's like, what can I use right now? How do I make a decision quickly? Who do I need? Who needs to be in the loop? What communication needs to be done? How am I going to pay for that? Like, oh my God, like you can hear it in my brain. But I also am so aware that that's the eye of the storm and that it will pass, like you said.
Yeah.
You know?
That's my meltdown, you know? My meltdown is spot fires. You know, it's not like actually fucking having an entire meltdown. Probably on the odd occasion it is that as well. However, you know, it's that moment of eye of the storm, right? And it's like, what do we need to do? Who do we need to talk to? What is the solution here? What else can we do? How do we, you know, like whatever, like make something happen, blah, blah. And, you know, and I think that within business, you know, there is a time for those different iterations of us. You know, sometimes it requires the striver. Sometimes it requires the, you know, us to just actually take a step back for a second. And sometimes it requires, you know, like the firefighter who's going to put out, the spot fire in that moment. I do think it was you now thinking about it. Speaking of reaching out to people, we had a conversation years ago, I guess now, where you spoke about this exact thing. And I remember this because I use it now with my own clientele too. And the, you know, this idea of like the norming, forming, storming, and high performing, and really sort of figuring out, like, again, another diagnostic. Apparently that's our theme for today.
Well, there's a few.
Hey, we didn't even realize we've given you a lot to work on, everybody. Like, you know, and that's the thing, like we're speaking this into existence today, that coming from places of experience. You know, we're not just like, here's another diagnostic, here's another thing you can do. These are actual, real, usable things that we do within our businesses or within our clientele or lives and stuff like that, because they are supportive, because they give you something to focus on, because they are action oriented, you know, and that in itself, like, gives us that resilience. It gives us that confidence and a bit of trust that we will then come through the eye of the storm, as you said.
Gorgeous being. It is truly my honor to have you here joining me on this co-created adventure through the strategy and energetics of seven-figure business. However it is that you landed here, whether we know each other personally or professionally, whether a friend shared this podcast with you as they thought you might get something out of it, or whether you stumbled across me by sheer accident or divine intervention, I want to thank you for being here, and I want to ask you a little favor. It is my joy to do what it is that I do every single day. And so if you have received anything here, a piece of magic, a strategy, a mindset shift, something that has transformed you in some way, I ask that you share this podcast with others so that together we can transform the world for the better. One business, one human, one frequency, and one podcast at a time. Cosmic Money, the podcast, the strategy and energetics of seven-figure business.
And so many people say to me, you know, how do you show up to work all the time when you've got stuff going on? So just to give a bit of background on it, my daughter's quite sick at the moment. She's been sick for 5.5 weeks off school. She's got a chronic disease that she's had since she was 2. So we've been dealing with this for a decade. Never gets easier. I actually said to my husband last week, it's actually getting harder. You know, I feel like this has been the hardest by far. But I'm here and showing up at work because of the things that we're talking about today, because work for me is like very similar to parenting, actually. I love it. I wholeheartedly love it. Is it hard? Yes. But I have these incredible people and strategies and systems that surround me to make it easy when I need it to be. Like, I complicate the hell out of business when I'm on fire. Like, I throw everything upside down and inside out, and like, you know, I'm driving forwards with all these ideas. But when adversity hits and we need to take a breath and I need to step away, or I need to like be with my family, it is so easy to do. And it's so easy for me to just shine a light on. Like, I describe it as, we were playing cricket and now we're playing hockey. It's a different game. It's different rules. It's different players. Like, I can't keep acting like I was playing cricket. What do I need to know now? Who needs to know about it? What needs to be done? But going way back to the beginning of this conversation, what are my values and what are my priorities and what can I strip back? So what are the things that are non-negotiable that can't get dropped? And it is so easy for me to make those decisions now, so that when the adversity does strike, when my daughter is sick, I can just be like, there's only 3 things I need to do in the next 3 weeks. Reality is there's only 3 things. So I don't overcomplicate it.
Oh my gosh, it's such a thing. Like, again, working very directly with clients, something that I see is a lot of that angst and thinking, everything seems to be the most important thing, and really when we're actually in something, or even just some of my clients won't even take, wouldn't, before me, everyone, wouldn't even take like a week off, like when they're sick or something like that. And it's like, buddy, like, you're no help to anyone if you're showing up every single day, like, and you're, unhealed and, viral or something along those lines. Like, that is not meant to be the norm, and really transitioning people's brains to be like, actually, the one thing I need to do right now is rest, or the one thing is, look after my family, or be present, with them, or, everything else. You get more used to everything else being able to drop away and really focus in on what truly is important, in that moment. And, our businesses are there to serve us. And if your business isn't serving you, like, we've got a runaway freight train and we need to do something differently, because it is there to serve your life. It is there to serve your needs. It is there to serve your, family. It's there to serve your passion. It's there to serve your excitement. It's there to serve, all of these other amazing pieces. And so if it's not that, we have a problem and we need to change and do something different.
Definitely. Absolutely. And I think it's, I think I've forgotten what I was going to say there. It's like brain fog, when we're saying that, I'm like, you say things and I think of something and then you keep going. I was like, oh yes, and something else. And oh my God.
Yes.
No, but I do. What I was going to say is, I don't know that my younger self would have heard what you just said, though. So if you're listening to this and you're like, nah, that's not me, I was there too. And I don't know that it would have changed it in my early 20s, though, because I was alive and passionate and driven in that space. But I think it is that, that cricket and hockey analogy. It's like, when has it shifted? Like, when are our priorities? When are our values? When has our life and landscape changed around us? And do we know when that is? Like, I constantly said to my husband, he worked core for 20 years, loved what he did. He worked in the hospital, absolutely loved it. It definitely funded our family. It had all these wonderful things, but I kept saying, how will we know when we get to that point that it's enough? Like, when are you going to step away? And are we brave enough? And do we have the courage to actually say, we're here? Now is the time. And it's scary. The unknown, uncertainty, it is scary, but if you're just going to be on that rat wheel and you're just going to go, business it's not enjoyable.
Yeah. Yes.
I love business now.
Yeah. You become, this is, there's symptomology, right? Like anything else. And the symptomology of, building a runaway freight train are things like, you've got, resentment coming up, like where, you think about your pricing or something like that and what clients are paying you and how much of an energy give. You've probably hit an income ceiling, a time ceiling, and an energy ceiling, really. And these are all actually just symptoms of misalignment. Right? Like, and so if we can just take those on board, like, as a bit more of an observer and be like, okay, I've got a bit of like resentment coming up in my business right now, like, what's that about? Then we can keep sort of, changing 2 to 3% each time and just get better and better and, and re-find our North Star. And that's how across time and space, you're not going to become burnt out, overwhelmed, stressed out, resentful of your business, ready to throw in the fucking towel, like, and all of these different things.
And I want to, this week, this week is such a good example, right? So I've grown 3 companies. They have absolutely provided an amazing income for our family. But this week I was like, one of my companies, I don't know that it's in the green where it needs to be. And I had a look and I was like, it's actually not. I was like, what's going on here? And I realized that because that business has been running for 11 years, we discount families that come in, and if people like buy and upgrade, there's this tiny little discount that goes on. But we started with individuals that took up 90% of our business, and now 87% of our business is couples or families. So those discounts have added up very quickly with the external environment increasing. But I had what you said where it was like my heart bled. I was like, but these guys have been with me for over 10 years. I don't want to change the figures on them. But I also am solid enough in business to go, hang on, it's not sustainable if I don't.
And then the business isn't there for
anyone. And it's been fabulous.
Exactly.
Like the clients have loved it and I've loved it. And that's why it has been such a good business for 11 years. It has hummed. Now, if I want it to hum for another 10, I need to realize I'm playing a different game now. The landscape has changed and I just forgot to catch up with it.
Yeah. And I really don't mean this like sentence in the kind of woo-woo way that's like out there and all the rest of it. I genuinely am saying this from the strategic business human that is in me, that believes that you can be a heart-centered and caring, passionate, business owner, right? Entrepreneur, and, be able to take things on board from again, diagnostic, right, point of view and just see things as business data. And exactly what you just highlighted, Ali, it's like, I took the business data, I had to look at it, and yes, I have all the time and energy and care for these amazing humans, but the correct business decision, not the decision made out of fear, fear of judgment or fear that you're going to lose a few people.
People are going to judge you. Yeah.
Yes. The emotion, of being the human. Some things are actually simply just business data. And again, it's another one of those lessons that you learn after you've been in business for quite some time where it's like, okay, I actually have to just put that business hat on and make that decision, based on what the information is providing me.
And I also think one thing I didn't say there that might really help everyone that's listening is this was a decision over like $10 or $20, right, per client. For clients that in the fitness business may only pay $110 a week. My other company, it's $60,000 for a client. So look at the difference in price. I was having trouble with $10, yet I'm quite happy to increase $60,000 to $65,000. So it's not the money, it was the emotional attachment that I have to my people and my community and my beautiful little home that I've built up, so I just wanted to highlight that I've been in business for a long time and I still have trouble on some of the simplest decisions, even though $10, like it's ridiculous. You could stand back and laugh at that.
And it just shows again, like that, the heart-centeredness of it, right? Like it is that, and it's okay to be human and to care and all the different pieces. And sometimes have to make the little hard decision over the $10 because it's the right thing to do. And actually that serves the collective at large,
Absolutely.
long term.
Because you will still be there. It will still be there. And, it's going back to that professional development. It's like, what's going on for me here and why am I having such a big reaction? Because like I said, I made a $5,000 decision the other day and didn't blink twice at it for a $60,000 client. It was like, yep. So it wasn't about the money. And being really honest with myself.
What am I projecting?
Yeah. What is going on here?
That I'm projecting all over my clients.
Yeah.
So I have 2 more questions for you. I want to ask you, what is it that I haven't asked you or that feels like, you want to share from our very varied discussion today that you feel, could absolutely be of benefit to our listeners?
Great question. The thing that comes up for me that we probably haven't touched on that might tie some of these threads together is what happens between our 2 ears. So we spoke about mind, body, and soul, and we've touched on a little bit of soul. We've touched on some behavioral stuff, but there is a chat that happens between our 2 ears and it can run the show. And so it's really important that we can hear that dialogue and tap into it at times and know what to do with it when we hear it. So I have a fear of success. Some people have fear of failure, but I have this fear that if I'm in the limelight, I'm going to interfere. or I'm going to take up space. So I've had to work really hard in that space to kind of go, oh, there's a little trigger there, that's this little voice inside my head that says, if you're really good at X, you're taking up space. So if you haven't done any work on your inner critic, if you haven't done any work on your core beliefs, if you haven't invested in yourself around the mindset piece, that is extremely valuable, not just in business, but in life. If I could say to, what's one thing, if I could only do one thing right now, I would love to do that with people. And I'm a fitness coach, like I said, right? I do heaps of body stuff as well. And I'm a yoga teacher. So the breath is so important. But I think whilst that mind's running the show and we're unaware of it, it can really take charge, and you're no longer in the driver's seat. You're in the back of the car and you're not really sure what road you're on and you're not really sure where you're going. You just know that you've got this feeling of where are we?
Yeah. Something I thought of before that then jumped out of my brain because you're amazing is that we can't always control our first thought, but we can control our second, and that's what comes to mind when you speak about this piece, is recognizing the dialogue, becoming aware that there even is one, that there's this, there's a conversation going on that you simply may not even be aware of right now. And the more that we can bring that into our awareness, we can't always control initially our emotional, chemical, biochemical, reaction, that first thought. But, the more that we start to control that second thought, the more that it starts to become our first, and this is how we grow and adapt and evolve across time and space.
And it's what we do a lot as coaches and mentors. And I know I did a lot in the counseling room, and I definitely do a lot on the fitness floor. Anyone can teach someone to squat. How do I have clients that stay here for over 10 years? It's because it's the mindset. It's because I get, into that language. What's happening inside your head? Why is this? Why is that? We do the technical, but we also do the mind work.
Yes, exactly. So I guess on that note then, if there was one thing that you could tell, a piece of advice, again to our listeners, to help them really navigate, on their entrepreneurial journey, going from, 6 figures to multi-6 figures to 7 figures and beyond, what would that be? What would be the bit of advice?
2 things. One is there's no problem you can't solve. You may not know how. You may not know when, but there is no problem you can't solve. And when you've got that mantra and you believe that to your soul in business, a problem is just a problem. It might be big or small. And that money example was a perfect example. It was a tiny problem, but it felt really huge for me, but it's just a problem. So there's no problem you can't solve. You may need to outsource and get some people in. You may need to ask some better questions. You may need some extra resources, but no problem you can't solve. And the second one is don't forget about your people. It is so easy to forget about our people and just assume that the team is okay and that they will be fine and that they can run on empty. They can't, and they are so valuable. Systems are valuable, processes are valuable, people are valuable. Remember to put them in the forefront of your mind.
Ali Flynn, thank you so much for being here with us today. And again, I'm so lucky that I get to call, pretty much all of our amazing guests, friends. And I love that, we've had this bit of a journey together over the last few years and so many likenesses, and that I've been able to reach on you in moments. And I think that really speaks not only to your character, but as well to, to the points that you were just making about, really having that beautiful environment and people around you and being able to draw on others who are in the arena with you, right? I don't know about you, but I don't believe in competition. There's enough success out there for us all. And so find your gold nugget human beings and obviously do life together. So Ali, thank you so much for being here. Please go check Ali out on her podcast, Challenges That Change Us. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.